So I don't know that I can adequately describe how difficult it is for those of us in our position at times like this in our nation. And so I just wanted to take a moment to say how much I appreciate Brad, the time of prayer that he spent to know what God might be leading him to help lead us through difficult times. And the words that he spoke really meant the world to me. And so again, just want to say thank you, Brad, for that. Yeah, go ahead, please do. Yeah. My name is Matt. I am one of the pastors here as well. Thank you so much for joining us here in person. Those of you in the video venue or watching online, I'm glad that you're with us as well. So I love the story of Apollo 13. You guys probably know that one. You got these astronauts in a space shuttle thingy, whatever that was, whatever. And an oxygen tank blows and alarms are going off, lights are flashing. They get on the radio right away and they say, Houston, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. And in that moment, everybody in the Houston space station, man, they go nuts. They get to their consoles and they're at their computers, and you've got navigation, you've got life support, you've got all these different people. Nobody's scrolling Facebook. Nobody's looking for their next job, right? They all know what they're doing. They're on mission together. The only thing they care about is bringing those astronauts home safely. And here's what strikes me about that story. When the mission is clear, everyone aligns. Clarity, it creates courage in them. The roles that they have, they make sense in that moment. Everybody's small little actions, they add up to achieve a great mission together. In 2010, we know this story too, a lot of us do at least. So there were 33 Chilean miners. They got stuck in a mine, right? When the tunnel down to the mine collapsed, they're stuck down there for days, or turned into weeks, and ultimately a couple months. But what's taking place up on the surface is what's crazy, what's awesome. You've got engineers from all over who show up together on that site. And you've got drill teams, and you've got cooks, you've got chaplains, you've got government officials all coming together to try and create different plans. They're throwing out different ideas, and they're trying different things. And nobody's complaining about what role or job they have. And the families of the miners that are stuck are actually camped out on site. And so every day when these people are working, they're seeing the wives there. They're seeing the kids of these dads that are stuck in the mine. And what struck me there is when the stakes are people, the mission gets personal. Titles fade away and personal preferences shrink back, and everyone only asks one question: hey, what can I do to help? What can I do? Because at the end of the day, everybody just wants to be able to say, I did everything I could to help save those lives. And so why do I bring any of that up? Because mission is awesome. Seriously, nothing gets me more jacked up than being on mission with a group of people that I love, all going one direction, living on purpose, for a purpose. In fact, the only reason our country is having the conversations we are right now is because one man chose to live on mission without being deterred by anything, without wavering away from that mission. He lived on that mission, on purpose, for a purpose greater than himself. For me, I was never a Green Beret or a SEAL. I know that's shocking. I got the tattoos and the beard just in hopes that somebody might come up and say, hey, were you a SEAL? And I'll just go, you never know. Never know. Because I love being on mission with people. I want somebody to hand me something that's bigger than myself. Something that goes far beyond my own concerns and my own preferences, and say, hey, we need to go achieve this thing together. And I found this definition about being on mission. It's a little long, but I really liked it. It spoke to me. It says this: to be on mission means to be determined and actively focused on achieving a very important specific goal or task with a strong sense of purpose and urgency. It implies you are dedicated to completing something important and will not easily be distracted or deterred from your objective. Mission is the why that aligns our what and our how. Mission is what tells the watching world what matters most to us. Mission is what makes it clear who we're for, not who we're against. Mission makes it clear who we're for. Mission is what makes it clear why we do the things that we do. I thought I'd share with you some of the biggest organizations that we all would know, some of their mission statements. Google says this: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's Google. Amazon says to be Earth's most consumer-centric company, Earth's best employer, and Earth's safest place to work, which implies someday they plan to be Mars's safest place to work. That's my guess. Meta, which happens to be Facebook, this is theirs to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together, which makes it easy for us to see when people are failing at their mission. Netflix, we all love Netflix. It's a simple one, to entertain the world. They do that very well for me, at least. These are some big missions, right? Missions should be big. It should be far bigger than just who we are in ourselves. It should go far beyond what we could ever accomplish on our own. Mission should be huge, but it's not the size. The thing is, all these other missions, Google, Amazon, they all fall short. They fall short because it's not the size of the organization that makes the mission important. It's the importance of the mission that matters most. And church, let me tell you, if you're part of this church, if you're part of Copper Hills, man, we have the biggest and most important mission that ever existed. Ever. In fact, every Bible-believing, Jesus-loving, Jesus-following, disciple-making local church has the same mission. We just happen to say it a few different ways. Here's how we say it here at Copper Hills. We say this: our mission is to help each other increasingly be with, think like, and be mistaken for Jesus. To help each other increasingly be with, think like, be mistaken for Jesus. But how? How do we actually live this out? What does it actually look like for us? That's what I'm going to try and help us understand today. I'm going to try and bring some clarity to our mission so we align. I'm going to try and help us see how our small local church context here, how our mission feeds into Jesus' greater mission of seeking and saving the lost, so that we realize what's at stake if we don't achieve our mission. Intrinsically or implied in any mission should be that something's at stake if you don't achieve it. What's the point of having a mission where there's nothing at stake? It brings nothing to you. It brings no passion, no fire, if there's nothing at stake at the end if you don't achieve it. And what's at stake for us? What's at stake for us is people's lives potentially not being transformed today. People's eternities not being changed forever. When we realize that our mission is about people's lives being changed, then it becomes personal for us. That's when we realize that it actually is the biggest mission of them all, far greater than simply entertaining the world. The only way I can do any of this, right, with the time I have allotted, which is going away really quickly as I go, is to try and focus on one aspect. We could say our mission statement this way, actually. We could say we exist to help each other increasingly be with Jesus, so that we increasingly begin to see our thoughts change more like into Jesus' thoughts, which in turn will cause us to live and to act and to love more like Jesus, so that we're mistaken for him or in the world around us. But that won't fit on a bumper sticker. It'd be a long bumper sticker. And so we just have to squeeze it in. But as you can see, the second two really only take place because of the first one. And so I'm going to spend my time this morning focusing on the first aspect of our mission and what it means to be with Jesus. And we're going to look at a story that Jesus told. It's in John's biography of Jesus' life. If you look at your Bible, it's the second half of your Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And John was one of Jesus' disciples, and he tells us this account of the story that Jesus told. And to give you some context, Jesus is with his disciples eating a Passover meal. We would know it as the Last Supper. If you don't have a church background, you've certainly seen the painting of all the beautiful white men on one side of the table eating dinner together. That's called the Last Supper. It probably looked a little different. I'm just give you some warning. It probably looked a little different. But that's the Last Supper, right? After dinner, Jesus decides to say, hey guys, let's keep this conversation going. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a walk. And as they walk, this conversation begins. It's probably about 24 hours or less before Jesus gets arrested, which then leads to his death, burial, and ultimately his resurrection. And Jesus knows this. Like, he's not blind to this idea. He actually knows Judas has already left. He's already left the group to go betray him and start the process of all that happening. So currently, Jesus is spending his time speaking with the 11 who are left, the 11 who truly want to follow him, who were walking with him and really want to know more about who he really was. And that's who Jesus is talking to. That's important for us to keep in mind as we read. And so this conversation that we're about to read, it took place somewhere between the upper room where the Last Supper happened and the Garden of Gethsemane at the Mount of Olives. And there was a road that they walked between there. Somewhere along the way, Jesus begins to speak about vineyards and vines, which could seem out of left field or out of nowhere for us. But in that place where they were walking, Jesus would have been flanked on his right side by terraced hills that today are covered with apartment buildings and houses. I've never been there, but I have friends who have, and I've watched a YouTube video, so I've got it all down. I know exactly what. So on the right, you got buildings, right? But it would have been covered with vines and vineyards as Jesus walked. And on his left, he would have been flanked by the walls of the temple that would have led into the courtyard of the temple, and the gates and the doorways into that courtyard would have been adorned with kind of golden vines along the edges of the door frame. And so it's in this place, this is my guess, right? I don't know for sure, it doesn't tell us. This is my guess that this sparks a thought for Jesus. He begins to talk with them and tell this story as they walk along this path. And this is what he says with if you could imagine it's night, that you got the warm glow of the lantern light kind of off the limestone of the temple walls, and Jesus begins this story. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. And for you and I, that doesn't mean much. It doesn't have the impact that it would have had on his first century followers, on those disciples that are walking along with him. When Jesus says, I'm the true vine, he's actually referencing back to something that they would have known in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. The Israelite people who eventually became the Jews, they were referred to as a vine often, but often it was done in a negative context. It was to say that, hey, you are a vine, people of God, Israelites, but you are not producing the fruit as you should, and so God's wrath is coming to cut you off. And so they would have felt that, right? As Jesus begins to speak about vineyards and vines, they would have felt that inside of them, that's what they're used to hearing. But Jesus in this moment is flipping it all upside down, flipping it all on its head, and this becomes nothing short of kind of a gospel good news presentation to those disciples as they walk with him. He says, hey, now I am the vine. I'm the vine, you're attached to me. All the work that you've done, all your attempts at morality and self-righteousness, and I'm just gonna work harder to be a good person, all that's done. Push that aside. You were never able to produce fruit that way in the first place. But now I got you. Now I have you. You're connected to me as the vine, and attached you will actually bear fruit. And he goes on in verse 2. He says he cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And quickly here, we're seeing that being connected to Jesus as the vine, it actually means something for us. It means that we should bear fruit. Now, how you define that fruit is really what matters for you when it comes to your relationship with Jesus. If you define that fruit as external morality, as kind of head knowledge and understanding, being able to check off a bunch of boxes on your list of things, of do's and don'ts, really, at that point, you're no better than the religious leaders of the time, the Pharisees that were so hateful towards Jesus. You're no better than that. That's how they lived their lives. What is the fruit that we're actually speaking of, though? And I think there's a couple ways that we bear fruit as we remain connected to him. The first one is this. We see it in Galatians 5. A lot of us know this verse, but maybe we look at it a little bit different today. It says this, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, which means patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. This is actually kind of the think-like fruit that comes from being with Jesus. Now, when I read that for you guys, I don't think there could have been there was anybody in the room that went, got it, nailed it, got him, check, done with that one. That's just simply not where we find ourselves. Everyone who considers themselves a follower of Jesus, myself included, realize that's not where we're coming at this. That we're not where we once were, but we're not where we really want or need to be, which makes this the increasing nature of our mission. Regardless of where you sit on this continuum of what it means to be in a relationship with Jesus, wherever you're at on this faith journey of yours, whether you started today or you've been on it for 30 years, there's always an opportunity for increasing. There's always an opportunity for us to step more into what it means to be with him and understand him and know his character more and learn his love for us and our love for others. That's the increasing nature of what it means to abide, to be with Jesus. The other fruit that I think is important for us is the fruit that happens in other people's lives. Other people begin to experience Jesus' love and kindness and goodness and patience through us. If the first area of fruit's more kind of the internal transformation, the second area is the external transformation that takes place secondary. After the internal transformation happens, we begin to see it play out in our lives. This is the mistaken for aspect of our mission. We go on to verse 3. Verse 3 says, you are already clean because of the word that I've spoken to you. And this is a quick verse that I want to hit on a little bit. This verse is awesome. It should be nothing but comfort to the heart of those who have chosen to follow Jesus as their Savior. Jesus says to his disciples, you are currently clean. You're clean because you believed in my word, not because of anything you did. In fact, he's well aware that within 24 hours, these fools are going to deny the fact they even knew who he was. Like, how bad does it get? That's about as bad as it gets. He knows that. And yet, even knowing that about them, he tells them, hey, you're secure. You're secure. This verse tells us that the moment we place our faith in Jesus, we become a branch attached to the vine and have within us everything we need to be able to produce fruit. This verse tells us that after coming to know him, we're connected to him. We can learn to be with him. We can learn to know him. Hopefully you're picking up on the fact that having a relationship with Jesus, being connected to the vine, truly knowing him is about so much more than a get out of hell free card. This is so much more about than getting out of hell free card that happens in the future. This is about experiencing his kingdom in our lives today. And so every verse we're going to read going forward is about that. Every verse we're going to read is about how do we actually experience Jesus today, not just someday when we die. We read in verse 4, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. One of the greatest kind of supernatural aspects of what it means to have a relationship with Jesus is this idea of union with Christ. That somehow, when we place our faith in him as our forgiver, and we ask him to be the leader and the Lord of our lives, that we are in him and he is in us. And the way it works out in many different ways, but mainly how it works that I think is important for us is the fact that as a follower of Jesus, when your heavenly Father looks down upon you, he doesn't see your failures. He doesn't see your shortcomings. He sees the perfection of Jesus because of Jesus' blood washing you clean, as we just sang about a few minutes ago. That's astounding. That's mind-boggling. But this union, it kind of infers an intimacy with Jesus that we're welcomed and wanted and delighted in by him, and it's so hard for us to believe. It's so hard for us to believe because we're pretty well acquainted with ourselves. Like, we know our shortcomings. We know where we're messed up. And so it makes it so hard for us to understand why he would delight in a messed up person like me. And we know that when we're undeserving, when we've offended, we tend to hide. We hide from him. I have a really good friend who many years ago been struggling with alcoholism. I didn't know it at the time, but I watched his marriage end, and I watched him lose his wife and his stepdaughter. I watched him lose his job. I had to go check on him a few different times at his house to wake him up from a night long of being drunk by himself. Eventually, he spent a few months living with me and my family, and he got sober, which was awesome, walking with him through that. I got to be, the text, he'd give me a text, and he'd say, hey, man, sober for 3 days. Hey, man, sober for 303 days. Hey, man, I've been sober for 614 days. I got them all. He would text me every day to let me know how long he'd been sober. Got to walk with him through that. Got to watch him grow in his relationship with Jesus and experience God moving in his heart in ways that he had never experienced before. And then recently, this has been since I've moved here, I didn't know the situation very well. I wasn't there with him all the time. He's like a brother to me, and I found out he lost his job. And I found out he lost the relationship with the woman that he'd been in with for multiple years at that point. And so I start calling. And he doesn't pick up. And I start texting, and he doesn't answer. He had fallen back into some addiction, not alcohol this time, but something else. And so what did he choose to do? He chose to walk away from everybody who loved him. He's like family to me. All I wanted was for him to call me. But he chose to hide in his apartment for 3 months. It took well checks from the police just to know that he was still alive. Finally, he calls me, this just a couple weeks ago, and he said, hey, Matt, hey, when you called me, I lied to you. I said I was still sober, and I wasn't. And the shame I felt from that caused me to hide. And so he chose, instead of digging in with the people who loved him more than anything, not just me, the entire church loved him and cares for him and only wants him to be with them so that they can love him through this situation. But shame caused him to hide. And we all know the feeling. We may not struggle with addiction on that level, but when we feel like we've offended, we avoid. When we feel like we've hurt somebody, we hide. If we believe we've offended, we walk away. And if we walk away, we can't abide in him. We cannot remain connected. And so what's stunning here is that Jesus says, if you remain in me, I'll remain in you. That we're welcomed and delighted by the Father because of our relationship with him. There's no reason to avoid Jesus. There's no reason to allow the shame to make us think that we even have the ability to walk away, to hide from him. It seems that so often it's normal for people to think that they've got to get themselves clean. For my friend, that he's got to sober up again. He's got to get past this second time off the wagon for him before he can call me up and let me know what took place, when all I ever wanted was for him to call me in the moment. We think we got to clean ourselves up when Jesus is saying, no, you come first. Let me do the heavy lifting. Let me do the heavy work of washing you off. You can never get clean in the first place. If you remain in him, if you stay connected to the vine, you begin to experience the work that only he can do in your life. But how do we stay connected? We move on to verse 8. This is to my Father's glory that you would bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. There's kind of a cycle of dependence here that we see. And I think because we don't quite understand, can't fully comprehend the fact that he loves us the way that he does, that the position that we have and maintain with our Heavenly Father because of Jesus, because we don't quite get that, we get it all wrong, we kind of flip this around. We read it as if to say, okay, I get it, I'll keep your commands, and then you'll remain in me. But that's not what he said at all. He says, if you remain in my love, you will obey my commands. If you remain connected to me, if you're with me, stuff will change for you. So it's not obey my commands and then I'll love you. It's grow in your love for me and you'll begin to change. You'll begin to obey what I ask you to do. And when we get this backwards, we remain completely enslaved. And we step outside of what it actually means to be in an unhindered, intimate relationship with Jesus. Because a follower of Jesus is not, for us, it's not do, therefore you love. It's love, therefore you do. Another story, someone wanted to meet with me quite a few months back. They'd been struggling with some lust and a little bit of a pornography addiction in their words. And before you create a picture in your mind of who this person is, let me make it clear. This person loves Jesus. This person has dedicated their lives to following Jesus. They serve like crazy. They're selfless. They're giving. They're generous. They love following him, and yet they still fall into this sin that's got a hold of them. So what I did is I sit down with them. I'm a good pastor, right? So I sit down with them. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me put some things into place for you. I'm going to help you get a VPN for your computer and your phone. Covenant Eyes was the brand that we use. Just, make sure you get all this stuff blocked. I can actually figure out a way to help turn your smartphone into a dumb phone so you don't even have access to the internet anymore. We can do that. I'm going to get you connected with an accountability group. Some guys that'll help you remain accountable. And this is how we're gonna fix this. And then it was a few months later, he sits down with me again with kind of tears in his eyes. And he's like, man, I fell back into it again. To which I'm like, I can't even figure it out. But when they're struggling like that, if any of us have had kids, we know this, they'll find a way around anything, right? They can find and for this gentleman, it was just the slightest crack in the doorway, and he can find his way back into it. And so I sit there, and the weight of it finally hits me. As a pastor of his sitting across from him, the weight of it hits me. Man, you can put all of these things in place, and there's nothing bad about them. You probably should. But it does nothing to change the heart. And if you don't change the heart, then you're gonna find your way back to it. And I said, man, I'm sorry. Like, let me help you figure out how to put that same amount of energy into being with Jesus. If you learn to be with Jesus and you put the things in place that you need to, I believe he'll do the heavy lifting of transforming your heart. He'll do the heavy lifting of changing everything about you from the inside out. And then these other things will be tools that will help you remain there. But put the effort into being with Jesus, because he's the one who does the work. And what we see happening in these last couple of verses is that we're called to is to work on growing in our love for Jesus. Grow in our love for him. And that in turn will impact and affect our obedience, our actions. Not work on our obedience in order to love him, but to grow in our love for him and see things begin to transform and change in our lives. And you guys might be surprised by this, but Jesus was a better preacher than I am. He's kind of a masterful teacher. In fact, he was actually teasing this whole main point throughout his whole story. In fact, a lot of Jesus' teaching teases this main thing that he wants us to take away. It's woven through everything he says. Jesus has been saying over and over again, love me, obey my commands, love me. We see it all over. And so what do? Is we go, man, there must be so many. There must be so many commands. To get it right with God, and there must be so many. And here's what he has to say. And this gets me every time. He says this, my command is this: love each other. Love each other as I have loved you. That's it. We spend so much time trying to look for other ones. Surely there's got to be more. It can't just be that. We remain in him. We abide in him. We are with him so that we grow in our knowledge of him who loves us. Not just more facts about him. Not just more head knowledge about him, which allows us to grow in our understanding of how to live in an intimate, unhindered relationship with him, being confident in his love for us that goes so far beyond our understanding, and his affection for us that makes it so that we can't even figure out how this even really works, so that we begin to experience our thoughts change. The way we think begins to radically transform more into the way that he thinks. And that in turn compels us to love others in such a way that we are the most tangible representation of Jesus in their lives, and that we're mistaken for him. That's what's at stake. That's what's at stake if we don't achieve the mission that God has placed us on. Jesus has purposefully placed people in your lives. We say it all the time. You live where you live, or work where you work, play where you play, go to school where you go to school, because Jesus has placed people in your life on purpose. And what's at stake is if you don't love them the way that Jesus loved them, if you don't show them a tangible representation of Jesus in their life, they miss out on Jesus. They miss out on him. Their lives may not be transformed. Their eternities may never change. That's what's at stake if we don't live out this mission that God has placed before us. And we will never be able to be those things for these people unless we've been with him. Unless we've been with him. And what's tough for me is I don't have time. I don't have time today in our application to give you a lot of things about what it means to be with Jesus, which is tough because in a lot of conversations I have with people, it's one of the toughest things for us to really grasp. What does it really mean? Matt, give me something. Give me a list so I can check it off and say, yeah, I've been with him. But I will tell you a quick story, if you will. So Wednesday morning, I go to the gym 5, I get my workout in, I get to the house, My kids are still getting ready for school, and so I've got my time. I take my Bible and my coffee, and I walk it into my bedroom. I've got a little chair in the corner where I like to pray, and so I sit down, take my first sip of coffee, set my Bible down. I dial in with Jesus. I get connected, I'm connected. And my dog sits right in front of me and starts to whine. And I'm like, you little punk. And so I knew right then, I'm like, okay, I haven't fed him yet. So I get up, go out to the living room. I decide to take my cup of coffee and my Bible with me to the living room. I give him his food. I sit down in another chair. I get reconnected because, I lost the connection. So I get reconnected with Jesus, and I'm sitting there, and he rings the bell at the door, which is how I know he wants to go outside. I'm like, you got it. This is stupid. So I grab my coffee, I got my Bible. I'm like, fine, I'll just sit outside. It's like 95, but whatever. I'll sit outside so that he can just be out there and I won't be distracted again. I sit down. I get, again, one more time reconnected. I'm like, okay, you there? Okay, cool, I got you. And so I flip open my Bible to where I want to read, and I look at my watch, and it's time to take my daughter to school. Right? That's not unique to me. If you've ever tried to spend time with Jesus, you know a story that's similar. Right? And if that's my only context for what it means to be with Jesus, forgive me, but then I'm screwed, right? The whole day's ruined. If that's the only thing I know about what it means to be with him, I've got nothing left. Thankfully, by his grace to me alone, I have figured out other ways in my life to learn to be with Jesus. That 15, 20, 30 minutes in the morning, it's not the only time I have. Because I've placed other things in my life that allow me to remain connected to the vine. And I'm grateful for that. So I'll give you one thing that I try and do, and maybe it's something you can actually use throughout this week. Ask him. Ask him. Ask him to be with you. When you walk into a meeting, say, Jesus, would you be with me in this meeting? When you're about to have that hard conversation with an employee or with a friend, just, Jesus, would you be with me? Help me to say the right words. And when you're about to head in after the long day, you pull into the driveway and you're like, man, I gotta turn it on for my kids. I gotta be there for my wife. Jesus, would you be there with me so I can love them the way that you want me to? And I don't know what's gonna happen for you, but I can promise the more you ask him to be with you, the more you're gonna experience him with you. He is with you anyway. Really, all you're doing is attuning your own thoughts to the fact that he's living life right beside you. It's a reminder to you more than it is to him. If this idea is new for you, if it sparks something in you, I would just like to invite you to keep coming around. This is our mission. This is what we preach to week in and week out. This is what we create programs around. This is why we do all the things that we do, so that we can increasingly help you be with Jesus. That's why we do what we do. But if you've never experienced what it means to have a relationship with him in the first place, that is step one of what it means to be with Jesus. If something's stirring in your heart and you're like, I don't think I've ever been with him at all because I've never asked him to be with me. What it means is to just simply say, hey, Jesus, I know that I'm broken. I can see it. I can see where I've walked away from you, or I've chosen my own way over yours. Would you forgive me for that? And Jesus, would you walk with me? Would you be my leader? Would you be with me? You can do that at any point in your life and begin to experience what it's like to live a life with Jesus and experience him really transform you from the inside out. Church, we exist to help each other increasingly be with, think like, and be mistaken for Jesus. Would you join us on this God-sized mission that he's given us? Would you pray with me? Jesus, I thank you so much. I thank you so much first for your amazing, massive, huge vision of seeking and saving the lost, and for placing a specific vision on us as a church for how we can play a role in doing that. Would you allow the mission that you have placed upon us, would you allow it to burn bright and hot in the hearts of those who love you in this church, those that know that you've called them to be a part of this church? Would you allow that mission to be what drives us forward, that we would be excited about walking down this road together as a community of believers who love you and want to see people come to know you and be transformed by you? We thank you. Pray all these things in your name. Amen. Well, thank you so much for being here with us, church. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.